Hello, everyone. My name is Courtney Pollock, and I'm the Customer Marketing Coordinator for SWK Technologies. I'd like to welcome you to our webinar, Revolutionize Your Logistics, How to Transform Your Operations with the TMS Integration, presented by John Freeman and Austin McLean. Before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping items. Everyone has been placed on mute to keep the background noise to a minimum. However, throughout the webinar, you can ask any questions you have. If you have a question, look at the question section of your GoToWebinar panel and you can enter it in there. We're going to hold all questions till the end of the presentation. You can also change your layout to see the view how you'd like in your GoToWebinar panel so you can focus on particular screens or particular presenters. We're also recording this presentation and it'll be distributed tomorrow to all attendees as well as those who registered but were unable to attend today. And finally, we'd appreciate your participation in our polls and closing survey. With that said, we're thrilled that you've taken some time out of your day to be with us. We're here to help you fulfill your vision of a smarter and easier way to run your business by providing you with tools, support, software, and industry knowledge whenever you need it. So whether you're here to explore a new solution or you're just here to learn, we'd like to encourage you to ask any questions you have while the experts are here. And as a quick reminder, SWK is constantly sharing important updates and software tips and tricks on our social media channels. You can follow us on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and our YouTube channel for more content like this. Okay, that's enough from me. I'm going to hand it over to John and Austin.
All right, thank you so much, Courtney. Appreciate that. Hey all, thank you for taking the time to join us today. Austin and I really appreciate it. A few housekeeping items from our side. I'm getting over a cold. I don't know if you can tell, if you can hear, but bear with me if I have a coughing fit or anything like that. But I don't usually sound this nasally. Yeah, like Courtney said, please jump in with any questions. We will have more than enough time at the end of this to go through any questions and get those answered. But first, yeah, why don't we kind of start off with a couple introductions, and then I'll start explaining what it is that FreightPop does within kind of the SWK ecosystem, ecosystems that we play in. So first of all, I'm John. Thanks so much for taking the time. I head up partnerships here at FreightPop, so I'm the liaison between FreightPop and SWK. We've been working together for a while. We've seen a lot of success in working with mutual customers to honestly just really automate and optimize and at times fully streamline their supply chain and logistics profiles. And then with me, I have Austin McLean. He's one of our product managers and is really in charge of the development calendar and all of the new features and products that we roll out within FreightPop. So he's one of the best folks to have on from a technical standpoint to answer questions. And he's also going to be going through an actual live demo of FreightPop and kind of showing us around in the live site later on in the presentation. Let's go ahead and hit that next slide. So let me just give you kind of a quick overview on FreightPop, right? Understand that most everyone here on this call is either from the Acumatica or the Sage ecosystem. We are what we would call a multi-mode transportation management system. Now, TMS, it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people. We, generally speaking, work with the shipper, right? With the folks that are actually owning and shipping their goods to and from their warehouse to their end customer, right? For the most part, we have a focus on manufacturers, distributors, construction, and some retail. Obviously, you can kind of see the pattern there is B2B, right? If you're doing a lot of B2C, if you're doing a lot of kind of parcel heavy, maybe even e-commerce, FreightPop's not always going to be the right fit for you, right? Going back to that multi-mode, FreightPop can handle parcel, LTL, full truckload, ocean, air, and rail modes, right? Shipments within those modes. But our focus, as you kind of understand by the name, is freight, right? So LTL and full truckload is really where we cut our teeth. And that's where we kind of spent the most time, energy, effort building out integrations and functionality around those modes, right? So just wanted to kind of talk through that and just make sure that we're off on the right foot there. FreightPop, we've been in market for about 8 years. Before that, we've been built for about maybe 11 or so. And we were an in-house system for what used to be our parent company, Horizon Technology, which is a couple $100 million computer hardware distributor. What happened was that company needed, a solution that really none of the current solutions on the market at the time fit, and so we decided to just go out and build our own. Taking that to market looked daunting at the time. There's a big moat for an LTL focused TMS to kind of create a system like FreightPop, because there's so many LTL carriers that we have to integrate to, versus if you're creating a parcel system, there's like 10, 15, maybe 20, right? So it's really complex creating a freight focused TMS, and so that's what we decided to set off and start to do, and that's kind of what's brought us here about 8 years later. Let's go next slide. Thanks. So FreightPop set out to fix or to amend some of the challenges that we in Horizon Technology at the time physically felt. Right, we kind of have a saying around FreightPop: built by shippers for shippers. That's very true, right? We weren't necessarily tech folks trying to break into the logistics industry. We were logistics, warehouse on the floor, supply chain managers deciding to build technology right around the pains and problems that we actually felt. And so what obviously, Horizon struggled with the most, and then in the early days, our customers came to us saying where their biggest issues were obviously high shipping costs. Even as recent as, a couple of years ago, we saw skyrocketing costs, right, with COVID for a lot of shipments, and specifically in the over the water shipments, right? We saw the average container from China to the West Coast went from 2,500 to like 18, $19,000, right? So obviously high shipping costs, and while that's leveled off a little bit, it's still extremely high to get your product from one point to another. Obviously, visibility is a big piece, right? Not only tracking and knowing where your shipments are, for not only for you but for your end customer, but also into the different options you have, right? So being able to rate shop and across modes, not just thinking, oh well, hey, this is a box, I'm obviously going to ship it parcel, but having a system that's intelligent enough to say, hey, you're shipping this box, but because of its dimensions and weight, and because you've also got this other PO that's in your queue right now, you could actually consolidate that and turn it into a pallet, or just send this single box on a pallet via LTL, and because of its dimensions and weights or whatever, you're actually going to save more. Obviously, there's a lot of complexity, right, in managing these multiple carriers and multiple modes of transport, right? There's a lot that goes into that, that I'm sure most of you understand if you kind of took the time to sign up for this demo. And then obviously errors, right? Whether that's on the front end, right, and data entry and manual error from fat fingering or whatever it may be, human error. And then on the other side, right, which is the actual carriers following up with your load and getting it to where it's supposed to be, not only on time but in one piece and in good fashion, and helping kind of maintain good standing with those customers. Those are all really big pain points that FreightPop solves. Not only set out to solve, but in current state solves extremely well. Next slide. So let's talk about what FreightPop is, right? We're that multi-mode TMS that's designed to be built around your ERP, right? Within Acumatica, for any Acumatica users on here, we're also built within your ERP. We have a native integration to Acumatica, but then we also have bilateral API integrations between all the Sage ecosystems as well as Acumatica. Let's keep going. So essentially, here's how that works. And Austin's going to kind of get into this in a little bit more detail when we go through the live site here. But essentially what happens is we're going to pull in all of the relevant information needed to book a shipment, right? And essentially what that's going to look like It's going to be your weights and dimensions, your product and packaging info if you have it, your origin and destination, right? All of those things that a carrier is going to need on their end to say, hey, this is the price for this shipment, and this is how soon we'll be able to get it there. So we'll pull all of that in automatically from your ERP, right? And then FreightPop is essentially going to run an Expedia-like or Google Flights-like engine with all of the carriers we have on the back end, and we're going to rate shop them, right? So you're not just rate shopping a couple carriers, right, in a single mode. Like I said earlier, rate shopping across modes, right? Because you never know. You may save more by switching into a different mode. But what this ensures is that you're going to be shipping on the lowest possible cost with the shortest in transit time every time, right? Now, there's other things that you can take into consideration and kind of play with the automation, right? If you want to, send it best way, right? Or best way next day, meaning, okay, well, what's the cheapest option that's going to get it there tomorrow, right? As well as a lot of other automation that goes into it. But we'll be kind of getting into that into the demo later on. But ultimately, what this does is it just puts the power back in the hands of the shipper, and kind of takes away from that carrier, right? And obviously eliminates that kind of manual need for you to go in and call the carrier rep or your broker, or email them, right, to get the quote, and get everything booked out, right? It's all completely automated. Go ahead, Austin. Cool. So once this has been shipped, right? So once FreightPop has said, hey, here's the best rate, here's the best in transit time, and you click, cool, this one, awesome. This is the one we want to go with. Well, then tracking kicks off, right? We call the API with the carrier that you decided to book that with, and then we're going to get a tracking information back from that carrier, right? And then we're going to display that in our tracking portal, which you'll see here in a moment, in lifetime, right? And so essentially what's going to happen is you're going to be able to see all of the shipments that are in transit. We call it the in transit report, regardless of what mode they're in, right? You can sort by mode. You can say, hey, I want to see all of my ocean shipments here, anything that's coming inbound, right? I want to see here anything that's coming outbound. I want to see on this screen or on this side. And then the nice thing about this is that it's reporting directly from the carrier. There's not a third party we're getting this data from. It's coming directly from the one-to-one APIs we built with these carriers, right? And then we mentioned here customizable proactive notifications, right? Why that's really important is because if there is a delay on your shipment, or if there is an issue, right, something that causes the carrier to not be able to fulfill the shipment or service it on in the time that the service level had established, well, you want to be able to be proactive and know that that's happening, right? Before your customer finds out that their stuff didn't get there and calls you kind of in a huff, right? So allowing you to be proactive and reach out to your customer based on the data you have at your fingertips and say, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Customer, apologies, but there was an issue with the shipment. It's not going to be on time. We're already working on getting another one out to you, or just kind of dousing that fire before it starts, right? And then of course, like the visibility of your supply chain, right? So being able to make sure that every type of shipment that you have has visibility. So 3PL shipment visibility, as well as multi-leg. And then we touched on the fact that we can do both outbound and inbound, right? So if you've got maybe you've got containers coming from Shanghai to Long Beach and you need to know where it is over the water, FreightPop's able to do that for you. It's pretty dang close to live time. I want to say it updates every couple hours or something like that. But when it's in the middle of the Atlantic, that's as live as you really need it to be. So yeah, I think this is the last slide before we're going to go into the demo here. So I just want to touch really briefly on another kind of feature set that FreightPop has that's gaining a lot of popularity with our shippers, right? And that's auto dispatch. And so going back, I said we had a saying earlier in FreightPop, built by shippers for shippers. We also have another one, and it's called one-click logistics, right? And this really helps us get to that point where FreightPop is going to be able to automatically convert your PO and SO to PO or an SO to a shipment, right? So again, taking all of that data that's in your ERP and then turning it into a shipment with that one click. And we are able to, with the depth of technology and automation, we're able to include all sorts of different business rules, right? So maybe you've got a very specific customer that is very picky and they don't like to ship on any carrier except Old Dominion. Well, that's okay. There's a business rule now built into your address book that anytime it's going to this customer, or maybe even this specific warehouse or this location, make sure the Old Dominion is the only carrier that will show up in the rate shop, right? Other things like specific accessorials, right? Anytime it's going to this location, we know that they don't have a dock. So we're going to make sure that we need to have a destination lift gate added to each one of those shipments at any given time, right? And so those kinds of rules, it goes much, much deeper than that. But that's what actually lends to this reduction in processing time of like 95%, right? Not only are you no longer having to go and call the carrier to get the quote and then call the carrier to book it and then call the carrier to get the tracking and all that sort of stuff, but now you're actually able to automate the entire process and make sure that it's fit and tailor made specifically for you and your business and specifically for your end customer. And the way that we do that, right, is with our carrier integrations. Going back to that original comment I made about a moat, right, in creating a system like FreightPop, we've built over 1,500 integrations at this point, right? And they're all homegrown. Why that's really important to note is that there isn't a third-party API provider that FreightPop uses to lease these APIs from another company, right? They're ours. And so what that means is we not only have the flexibility in those APIs to make changes, or if something breaks, we can go in and we're the first point of contact. Customer, has a support issue, we're frontline, we fix it, right? Because it's our integration that is maintained by us. But there's also no third-party cost baked into each transaction. A lot of our competitors, they use these third-party API aggregators and providers because, let's face it, it's very difficult to build this many integrations. But those systems that they lease from are very expensive, and now there's this cost that's baked into their transactions that obviously has to get passed down onto the end customer. So one of the reasons I mentioned that is just to touch on the fact that you get so much value from FreightPop. You get so much technological and automation value from FreightPop for a very, very reasonable price simply because we built it all on our own.
Thank you both. Before we dive into the demo, we'd like you to participate in a quick couple of polls. So our first question is, how many shipments is your company making a month? So are you in that 1 to 100 range, 100 to 500, 500 or more? And I'm really interested as these results come in, it's really interesting. It looks like we're kind of across the board. So thank you to everyone who's answered so far. We'll leave this open for a few more seconds. Okay, so it looks like, we're pretty across the board. The majority is at 500 or more, but we've got, some in that 100 to 500 range and some in that 1 to 100. And then our next question before we dive into the demo is, what mode do you use for shipments? So you can select as many of these options as you'd like, but, are you using one of these, all of these, something not listed? And once again, we are, kind of all across the board here. So that's interesting to see. And I'm going to leave this open for just a few more seconds, and then we're going to have Austin dive right into that demo. Okay, so once again, pretty across the board, FedEx is coming out ahead, but we're using a bit of everything. Thank you guys all for your participation, and on to the demo.
Sounds good. All righty. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for hopping in, spending a little bit of time with us today. As you can imagine, we're quite expansive solution, so not everything is going to be able to be demoed to you today, but hopefully you'll get a little bit of a taste of the depth and complexity that FreightPop can offer, but the ease in which it is to use that. Right? We aim to stay true to our core, built by shippers for shippers, not technology built by technology people for shippers, because we know at the end of the day that this type of software lives in the warehouse. So it needs to be very quick and intuitive for your teams as you grow and scale throughout the year, or as your business goes to evolve. And so, our site is set up around the key tenets around what it takes to really execute a shipment. And so this first one that we're showing you, this is our order management grid. This is where some of your load planning, optimization, and really your warehouse workers know what needs to ship, right? And so this information gets populated from an ERP, and you can see that we have a split out between sales orders and purchase orders. Big difference here is purchase orders are coming in at the product level, right? And sales orders are coming in at the order level. However, you can switch it between items or not. And so that's kind of how the process works. From here, you can ship out from here if you want. You can quote all selected. You could ship all selected. You can consolidate orders into one master order. You can update details, and then you can also kind of print some pick lists for some light WMS functionality to help with your warehouse. But for the purposes of this demo, I've created kind of an order to simulate what would come in from Acumatica or Sage in this instance. And so the bulk of where people live is going to be within our quoting and shipping screen, right? And the goal for us was to bring all this functionality, regardless of mode, into one screen. We know that some solutions have different screens for parcel and LTL and full truckload and ocean. We wanted to really bring it down and tailor it based on what users are looking for. And so I'm going to bring in this one order. I'm going to go ahead and pull it in. And so a few things to call out as this information is coming in. The first one you can see is that it says address verified, right? Or verify addresses. And what we do is we check to ensure that the addresses entered align and are accurate according to Google, UPS, and FedEx. Because while an order may have come in from the ERP or from an e-com site, right? We know sometimes addresses might not be right, and you want to make sure you don't get dinged with extra fees to ensure that these addresses are correct. So in this case, both of these are correct. I'm shipping from our location in California to Disneyland, right? And I'm shipping one pallet. And what you'll notice is that if this needed to be changed to a box, I can change it very quickly. If I needed to change it to a truckload, very easy as well. I can make it a multi-stop truckload if I need as well. So as you can see, the screen can be quite dynamic depending on what it is you're really trying to do. So again, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to say I'm going to ship my one pallet. It was 40 by 40 by 400. You can see we're automatically calculating the freight class, so you don't need to worry about that. We can handle NMFCs if you ship off your NMFCs. If you ship hazmat, we can handle all the hazmat related information as well. And so we're going through here, you can see that my SO number has dropped down to this field. I can put different delivery instructions and pickup instructions. These can be saved to the address level as well. You can schedule your pickup ahead of time if you'd like as well. And then from here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to rate shop this shipment. So right now I'm going and calling all the different carriers that I have set up in my site, right? So these are your carrier relationships and contracts, because we know that you spend a lot of time negotiating those to make sure that the rates are in fact accurate. And it's pulling across all those to see which ones are going to pull back based on the information that I have entered, right? So in this instance, you'll see, I've got about 20 different options to choose from. And if you wanted to see, hey, I was really looking for, AAA Cooper, and it was like, oh, they don't really have any services that select here. So you can see that we're going to result any of the errors that we may get from carriers, but we're really going to hide those, and we're going to demonstrate a grid that's going to show you the carrier name, the service, the transit days, your discounted rate. If you work with markups to ensure that you are making a margin on your freight, we can handle that. We also have a dynamic carrier rating that's going to dynamically adjust based on carriers on-time pickup, on-time delivery. if they have any non-conformances or claims, to make sure that you have the most up-to-date information when you're going to ship with that carrier. So in this instance, I'm probably going to ship with ABF. I want to just double check, what's the breakdown of the quote here. So I can see here's the quote number, here's how long the quote is valid for, and here's the quote breakdown of the shipment, right? If I needed to spot quote this shipment, if I was doing a larger truckload, it's very easy to go ahead and send it to the different carriers that you want. And it's going to send them an automated email that your carrier can reply to. And they are going to result that once they submit that spot quote, it's going to enter in back into this screen so that you can rate it right alongside it. Again, if you're using carriers that don't have API connections, because we know that some aren't quite in the 21st century, we have some industry standard rate sheets that you can have your carriers fill out rates as well. And again, you and your users would experience it all within one site. So regardless of where the information is coming from, whether it's an API technology connection, whether it's a spot rate or a contracted rate sheet, all of that can be shown to the user in one easy site. So from here, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ship this shipment. And what you'll notice is I have configured for my user to be, hey, I need to make sure that I'm shipping with the lowest cost carrier here, because there might be instances where you might want faster service or something like that, but you want to make sure that your warehouse workers aren't shipping with carriers that are bringing them donuts or sporting tickets, every Friday, right? You want to make sure that you're shipping with the lowest one. So this is capturing this information at the time of shipping, and in this case, I'm going to say it's a faster service required. Now, at this point, it's going and it's actually tendering the shipment to the carrier, and it's generating all the documents that are needed for this. So what you'll notice is there's going to be a packing list, there's going to be a pallet label, there will be a BOL. If you're shipping international, it's going to have your commercial invoice, your SLI. If you're going truckload, it'll have your rate confirmation, your truckload manifest. Basically, whatever you're going to need for a particular shipment, we can handle. And so the first one to call out here is your is a UCC label as well. So we know that sometimes when you're shipping to big box retailers, you need to abide by their guidelines. So we can handle a variety of the different UCC labels that are needed for a given shipment. Again, pallet label, you can see the BOL here. And if I zoom in real quick, it's going to show the carrier provided quote number. You can see my pickup and delivery instructions. We automate the handling of who's going to get the billing information based on the configurations that you have set up within the site. And then this gets handed to the driver at the time of pickup along with the packing slip. And if this is set up in your warehouse, you can connect your scales and printers as well, so you're not having to manually print any of this information out. But what you'll notice is you'll land here and you'll get a summary of the information that was just processed through. Now from here, we're actually in the process of updating all of our new user interface. So this is all what we're transitioning to, and we're days away from releasing our new tracking page. But from here, it's going to drop you onto our tracking page, right? And this is really meant to be more exception-based management. So similar to what John was talking about, instead of having to go to a bunch of different carrier sites to rate the shipment, you now don't have to go to a bunch of different carrier sites to get updates on your shipments as to where they are, what your updates are, and where your goods are in progress, right? And so it can really be structured based on what's in transit. John was saying it can be based on ocean container. We handle the drayage as well. And it's going to really solidify everything. So in this case, these are all fake shipments. And so when I'm showing that I have 70 shipments and 47 of them have issues and delays, hopefully that wouldn't be the case for your business. If you would, I would say, maybe look at some different carriers. But in any case, you could see from here that we're going to show a status bar as to where your shipment's at. We can see the carrier, the service that it went. You can see a variety of kind of other information that's here. And then if I wanted to click into it, so this is the shipment that I just, that was booked in the past. Again, not a real shipment, so it's not going to have any real live information. But if it did, it was going to populate all this information based on what's going to be retrieved from the carrier. So again, really helping to ensure and cut down a lot of the manual work that's needed, on when it comes to, goods in transit. We have some cool integrations with providers like Tide, which is device level tracking that can also be integrated to this page to track your shipment, not necessarily the truck that it's in. So we've seen a lot of success with some of our shippers from that side of things. And then lastly, we handle the auditing on the back end, right? So what the carrier quoted you, is that actually what they're billing you, right? So we handle the EDI pull-in of the carrier invoices. and we can configure and automatically set up via an integration to the AP side of the house to ensure that all the information that's needed to actually reconcile a shipment are done there. So again, I don't think I have live invoices actually in this site, but or in this particular instance, but it's going to basically show you exception management, where if the carrier quoted you 200, but they're billing you for 250, you can kind of see what's going on there before you actually pay the carrier invoice. Now, as we go along, real quick, John will probably mention this in a little bit, but we have unlimited users within the site, and it's highly configurable to what those users may need to execute their shipments, down to the types of carriers you want them to have access to, the screens you want them to have access to. If you've got a variety of different warehouses, you can limit it so they can only see shipments to that warehouse. If you want to set default pickup and delivery times based on the location that they're at, all that information can kind of be housed specifically to those users. Again, at the address level, you don't have to, but we can maintain an address book, which can help to speed up the process when it comes to rating a shipment. And a few things to call out here. One, if you're shipping to a customer and you want to ship on their carrier accounts, right? We can maintain their shipping accounts and ship on behalf of that. We can set up a variety of different rules for those different locations. So if that customer doesn't want you to use certain carriers, you can restrict them in this site so those carriers don't pop up, right? If every time you ship to that address, like John was saying, and you need to make sure you have a destination liftgate, you can enable that here. If you need delivery instructions or pickup instructions, that can be handled here as well. And then I'm not going to go through all of them, but we have configured and handled a lot of different rules that can sit within FreightPop system. So we can handle some of the auto calculation and auto packing goods. We can handle fulfillment kits. There's a variety of different things that can be set up that if you were to sign up, we have a whole onboarding team that walks users through that whole process. But it's made to be very intuitive and configurable to the end user. When it comes to adding a carrier, very easy. So FreightPop's added all these different carriers, and if you want to add a new carrier, it's as simple as pulling some key information from your account with that carrier and adding it directly to FreightPop, and those rates are going to pull in live. So in this particular case, you can see here's my A2E Pile account, and all I needed was my email, my password, and my account number, and it's going to pull all that information in. But then also, I can also help to configure that carrier. So if I want to restrict it based on certain carrier lanes that it should go to, if I want to make sure that it's not quoting over a certain pound, so that, even if they return a rate, that's more volume or truckload, we know that they can't service it. So I'm just going to limit it on the front end, right? If you need alternate billing for that carrier, that can be set up. So really a depth that can kind of exist there from how users would want to set that up. And then the last piece that I wanted to show was our analytics page, right? And so we have an in-app connection to Power BI to really bring back really high value, this high value data set that we're creating to bring back to generate really helpful insights to our end users. And so here's kind of one of our default ones, which isn't anything crazy, but it's looking at, what are my shipment trends per month and by year, right? And how is that changing? Is there seasonality? Is there information I need to be aware of? We have one related to my shipment metrics, right? So what's my cost per unit, my cost per package type, my cost per mile, all that information that is really helpful when it comes time to making a decision. FreightPop can handle that information and can render pretty quickly for large amounts of data that is being sent and captured. We can handle carrier performance, which is really a carrier scorecard. So how often are carriers reporting or delivering on time, picking up on time? What percentage of their volume are they using? Really a very wide breadth of information that can be captured here. And so, here I'll kind of pause. There's a lot more that we could get into, right? But hopefully this gave you a little bit of a taste as to what the FreightPop solution can offer to you as a shipper. So with that, John, I'll pass it back to you.
Awesome. Thanks, Austin. Really appreciate you giving us the walkthrough there. So before we break off into questions, which that's coming next here, I just want to touch really briefly on customer success and what that means to FreightPop, right? yes, we love our customers. We want to do right by our customers. We've got fantastic support, fantastic onboarding, all of that sort of stuff, everything you would expect from an enterprise level software. But ultimately, what true customer success means to FreightPop is ROI, right? If you're not seeing significant savings by utilizing the platform the way that it's intended, then we're ultimately not going to want to sign you up as a customer, right? That's kind of just that's kind of the line that we try to draw. These are a couple case studies that, if you're interested, please reach out to your CAM at SWK. We have tons and tons of case studies, tons of different, even condensed ones. We just call them why we ones, with our customers that explain, look, this is what we were doing pre-Freight Pop. This is what we were doing post-Freight Pop. And this is the difference for us, right? So Odeco, you'll see right there, they and we'll get into pricing in a bit. I'm sure that's going to be one of the questions. And your CAMs will be able to help answer pricing questions for Freight Pop as well. But Odeco, they are a fairly large freight shipper, but their annual subscription with Freight Pop is not all that unreasonable. It's not a massive subscription, but they save by using Freight Pop the same amount monthly as their annual subscription is, right? So that's a really strong and powerful case study for us, because it says, look, like, ultimately this is what the technology that Freight Pop was that is behind Freight Pop was created to do, right? It's really here to save you not only on your carrier side and the hard dollars there, but on the inefficiencies and optimizations, on the kind of headcount side of things, right? And being able to repurpose other valuable people in your org from kind of, meaningless jobs where there's a lot of, potential for human error into other focuses within the organization, right? And so just wanted to touch on that before we move into Q&A, that customer success for Freight Pop is ROI. And if we don't see that we're going to be a perfect fit for you, we'd rather just say, hey, there's another partner, or hey, maybe there's someone else you should talk to that might be a better fit, right? We're not out here to waste anyone's time. So just wanted to kind of close on that. And then Austin, if you want to move to the questions page, and I think Courtney, you might want to take it from here.
Yes, thank you both. We have had a good amount of questions coming in, so we'll dive into that in just a second. If you haven't got your question in yet, go ahead and put it in now while we have the experts here. And in the meantime, if you would participate in our final poll, so just curious, what are your next steps? Do you want to see a more personalized demo? Would you like your SWK rep to reach out with a bit more information, or are you just here to take in all the information and see what's out there? Thank you everyone participating so far. I'm going to leave this open for a couple more seconds, but while we're doing this final poll, John, can you answer our first question, which is, can I use Freight Pop's carriers, or can I only use my own?
That's a fantastic question. And the answer is yes. You can use carriers from anywhere you get them, right? So as Austin mentioned, your own carrier contracted rates that you put blood, sweat, and tears into. But Freight Pop also has carriers that we're able to turn on and rate shop against your carriers, right? Different marketplaces, different templates, anywhere you're able to get rates from. The idea is the more rates you have and the more carriers you have in the system rate shopping against each other, the better price and in transit time you're going to have. So absolutely, you can get carriers from Freight Pop as well.
Great, thank you. Our next question is, we pick carriers based on cost, but also based on performance. Cheapest isn't always the best. How do you account for quality of service?
That's a really good question. Yeah, so I don't know, we probably went over it pretty quickly in the demo, but in the rate shopping portion of the system, you have different different unique identifiers that we can choose when booking that shipment. Price, obviously, and in transit time, obviously, but we also have what's called carrier performance, right? And so carrier performance basically will assign a score to a carrier based on your specific experience with that carrier, not like a broad, freight pop score, but it's based on your experience with that carrier. That carrier score, Austin, correct me if I'm wrong, but it drops by 1/3% every time that there's either a delay or an issue or damaged or a claim is filed against them, anything like that. It'll drop by like 1/3%. So if you've got a carrier shipping, or you're shipping on them and they're at like 95% and you've got another one down at 80, that's a significant difference, right? And you can actually take that into account, and Freight Pop can take that into account when booking these shipments to make sure that yes, you're being able to take into effect carrier performance.
Awesome. Our next question is on carriers as well. So we don't have contracts with carriers today. We use a broker. Can this solution help us?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of our customers, they don't contract directly with the carriers. They use brokerages or 3PLs. Absolutely. All of those brokerages and 3PLs, generally speaking, offer their rates via API as well. So we'd be able to pull all of those into our system. And if they don't, like Austin said, we can provide kind of a standardized template that they can fill out for those rates and pull them in as well. So yeah, no issue there.
Okay. Our next question is about another integration product. So does your product compete with IGG's container tracking Acumatica add-on?
That's a really good question, and I'm not very familiar with IGG. It has come up before. I've heard it once or twice before. I would be hard pressed to say we're competitive. I don't know enough about them to say. Freight Pop, obviously, we're so much more than just ocean container tracking, right? That's kind of like a feature that we offer in addition to all of the services we provide. So if you're looking solely for Acumatica ocean container tracking, IGG might be a really fantastic place to start. It could be worth a conversation with Freight Pop as well. But I would say we're probably not competing.
Thank you. Our next question is, can I book a shipment with Freight Pop inside of Acumatica?
Yes, you can. Austin, do you want to add any more color to that? I know.
Yeah,
Yes.
we're built natively within Acumatica, so that you can kind of ship directly within kind of the interface that you're used to. What we showed today is kind of the Freight Pop specific one, which has a little bit, broader depth and functionality. But generally speaking, the main shipping process can be executed from within Acumatica as well.
Great. And on the other side of that, we have a kind of two-tiered Sage 100 question. So what information goes back into Sage 100 from Freight Pop? And can Freight Pop automatically send the information back to Sage for invoicing?
Yeah, good question. So I need to pull the specific fields for Sage 100, but generally speaking, the ones that we send back are about the same on 80 to 90% of our ERP integrations. It's going to be the cost, the carrier, and the service, and the tracking number, I should say. And that happens usually at the time when the shipment is booked. And so that gets sent back to the ERP. And from there, it can kind of help close out that transaction. In terms of automatically kind of pushing back to Sage on the invoice side of things, so we do have a process that'll run that'll automatically, anything that's in the approved status, whether it's system approved or user approved, can be automatically sent back to Sage to help with kind of the AP portion of paying those invoices.
Awesome. Our next and potentially final question is, how does it handle international shipments? Does it generate a commercial invoice? Does it tell you the country specific requirements? So kind of how does your solution operate within the international realm?
Yeah, so we do handle international shipping. A lot of our users will use it. You know, we do a lot, so it's given the kind of country specific requirements. Generally speaking, we cover most of them. So when you're going to Canada, you need a Canadian invoice, right? You know, when you're shipping with the parcel carriers, those carriers generate the commercial invoices by the carrier. Any other time, Freight Pop will generate the commercial invoice. You know, if you need your SLI when you're shipping, we can do that. You know, if you need to ship, you like getting an ITN number and filing your EEI filing, FreightPop can automate that, as well as ensuring that you know it's going to the right places. So we're quite familiar on the international side. You know, I will say a lot of times we're highly tailored towards having at least either the origin or the destination within the U.S. That's where we see most of our kind of success originating.
Okay, and I actually do have another question for you. So, does the tracking go into the invoice to the customer? Is the customer invoice created with the shipment in Sage? So I think this one's particularly for that Sage 100 connectivity.
Okay, does the tracking number go within the that would probably be more of a Sage part of it, of like FreightPop can send that information back, and then depending on what you want to actually be a part of the invoice that's sent to the customer would kind of be up to your discretion. So sometimes customers will do that. You know, if you want the customer to have information, FreightPop can automate the process of sending a confirmation email to the customer directly from FreightPop, so that if you want them to have information when it comes to tracking, that can be followed there. But when it comes to actually generating the invoice that you're going to send out of Sage, usually that's, you know, we've sent the information at that point, and usually, you know, it's up to our customers to determine kind of what they want to be actually included on the invoice itself.
Okay, well, thank you both. That's all the questions we've had today, and that was a really good Q&A. So thank you everyone that asked some questions. And I also want to thank you, John and Austin, for taking time for being with us today and really giving us a lot of good information on what FreightPop can do.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Thank you so much for having us.
Sounds good.
awesome. Well, thank you all. We hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and see you on the next one.
Thanks again, all.
Bye.